You really want to call the sheriff on me tonight, Cynthia? I asked, watching the blue glow of her phone light up the smile she wore whenever she thought she had finally cornered somebody. The question barely slowed her down. I already did. Behind me, burgers hissed over the grill, mesquite smoke rolled through the warm Texas evening, and country music hummed low beneath the laughter of 25 people scattered around my ranch yard. Boots scraped gravel. Ice shifted inside coolers. Somebody near the barn popped the tab on a soda. It should have been the easiest Saturday night I'd had in months. Instead, Cynthia Whitmore stood just inside my iron gate wearing spotless white sneakers and the expression of a woman arriving to collect property she already believed belonged to her. She was 53, president of the Silver Creek Estates HOA, and absolutely convinced that the little title printed beneath her name gave her authority over every fence post she could see, including mine. "This gathering is over," she said. I glanced past her toward the subdivision entrance half a mile down the road. Perfect stone columns. Perfect lawns. Perfect little monument sign glowing beneath landscape lights. Then I looked down at the brass survey marker beside Cynthia's right shoe. She had crossed it by 6 feet. "Interesting. You're on private property," I said. "Silver Creek has noise regulations." "I'm not in Silver Creek." Her jaw tightened. She lifted the phone again. "The sheriff's department can decide that." Somewhere behind me, a man laughed into his iced tea. Cynthia heard it. Her face changed. "Is something funny?" Silence settled over the yard faster than a summer storm. Even the music seemed suddenly too loud. I reached over and turned the speaker down. The grill crackled behind me. Smoke carried the smell of pepper, beef, and mesquite across the driveway. Cynthia looked around at the pickup trucks parked beside my barn. Fords. Chevys. One dusty Ram with a folded uniform lying across the passenger seat, though she never noticed it. To her, these were just ranch guys in jeans and ball caps. Exactly what I wanted her to think. "Dispatch said officers are coming," she announced. "Good," I said. That answer bothered her. I could see it in the way her fingers tightened around the phone. She had expected arguing. Maybe panic. Instead, I picked up my barbecue tongs and turned a burger. Behind me, a familiar voice spoke quietly. "You want me to handle this, Captain?" I didn't turn around. Cynthia did. Her eyes moved toward the picnic tables, searching for whoever had said it. I closed the grill lid with a metallic clang. "Not yet," I said. Then headlights appeared beyond the gate, followed by the unmistakable flash of red and blue against the oak trees. Cynthia smiled. I looked at the brass marker beside her shoe and thought about the red binder sitting 20 yards away in my workshop. 6 months of letters, photographs, timestamps, certified notices. Every time Cynthia had crossed a line, I had kept the paper. Tonight, she'd crossed the actual one. The patrol units rolled onto the gravel, and Cynthia hurried toward them like she'd just summoned her personal enforcement squad. She had no idea whose barbecue she'd interrupted. More importantly, she had no idea whose department she had just called. 6 months earlier, that same stretch of gravel had been the reason I bought the place. I remember shutting off my truck on the first afternoon and hearing almost nothing. Wind moved through the live oaks. A loose hinge clicked on the old barn. Somewhere beyond the south fence, cattle pushed through dry grass under a sky so wide it made the subdivision roofs in the distance look like toys. My name is Daniel Mercer, though everyone who knows me calls me Dan. I was 44 years old, and after more than 20 years with the county sheriff's department, I had learned to appreciate places where nobody needed anything from me. At work, every hour came with radios, reports, decisions, and somebody waiting for an answer. Out here, the loudest demand usually came from a stubborn gate hinge. The ranch covered 26 acres that had once belonged to my grandfather. I spent summers there as a kid, repairing fence with him and learning that property lines were not suggestions. When the land came back on the market, I bought it, before a developer could carve it into quarter-acre lots. I kept the weathered barn. I kept the cattle fence. I even kept Grandpa's iron gate, rust along the bottom rail and all. What I did replace were the survey markers. I paid a licensed surveyor to walk every boundary and record every corner. The brass marker beside the north gate was especially important because Silver Creek Estates had grown right up against that side of the property. Their stone entrance sat about half a mile away, polished and illuminated every night like the entrance to a resort. My ranch was different. Gravel driveway, cedar posts, dust on my truck. That difference apparently bothered Cynthia Whitmore. I met her 11 days after moving in. I was replacing a warped board on the barn when a white sport utility vehicle stopped outside my gate. The engine stayed running. Cynthia stepped out holding a leather folder against her chest. She introduced herself as president of the Silver Creek Estates Homeowners Association, then looked past me at the barn as though she had discovered an abandoned appliance beside the highway. She said the community had standards regarding exterior structures. I set my hammer on the tailgate. That sounds reasonable for your community. Her smile paused. Your property borders Silver Creek. It does. So changes visible from our neighborhood may require architectural review. I wiped sawdust from my hands and walked to the gate. Then I pointed at the brass survey marker shining beside her shoe. Silver Creek ends there. She stared at it, then back at me. I could smell her perfume over the cedar dust. We should discuss bringing your property into compliance voluntarily. I almost told her where I worked. It would have ended the conversation quickly, but the ranch was the one place where I did not want my badge speaking before I did. So I simply smiled. There is nothing to bring into compliance. Cynthia closed her folder with a soft snap. Before leaving, she looked at my barn, my truck, and the old iron gate one more time. We will see about that, Mr. Mercer. 3 days later, the first envelope arrived. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy enough to feel official, with the Silver Creek Estate seal printed across the upper corner in dark blue ink. I opened it at my kitchen counter while coffee hissed through the machine behind me. The violation notice claimed my barn exterior failed community appearance standards. Fine, $150. Compliance deadline, 10 days. Then I folded it, drove to the county records office on my lunch break, printed another copy of my deed and survey, and mailed everything back with a short note explaining that my ranch was not part of Silver Creek Estates. I expected that to end it. Instead, another envelope arrived the following week. This one complained about my livestock fence. Then came a notice about my utility trailer being visible from the subdivision road. After that, my pickup was labeled an unauthorized commercial vehicle because I had left a toolbox in the bed. Cynthia had discovered paperwork, and she was using it like a lawn sprinkler, spraying violations in every direction and hoping something would stick. I answered each notice the same way. Deed, survey, parcel number, no membership agreement, no homeowners association jurisdiction. Cynthia answered facts with more letterhead. By the second month, Silver Creek security vehicles had started slowing down outside my north gate. A white golf cart appeared twice, even though the nearest community path ended hundreds of feet away. One Saturday morning, I heard tires crunching where they did not belong. I stepped out of the workshop and found a uniformed private security employee standing inside my gate taking photographs of the barn. The smell of fresh-cut cedar still hung in the air from the boards I had been working on. Can I help you? I asked. He lowered his phone. Association inspection. This is not association property. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. Mr. Whitmore sent the work order. Cynthia Whitmore? Yes, sir. I pointed toward the brass marker. Your inspection ended back there. To his credit, he apologized and left immediately. I saved the security camera footage anyway. That became a habit. Every envelope went into a red 3-ring binder on the shelf above my workbench. Every email got printed. Every camera clip received a date and time. At work, documentation had taught me something Cynthia apparently never learned. Memory argues, records do not. Then Walter Bennett stopped by. Walter owned 12 acres west of mine, outside Silver Creek, just like me. He was 71, retired from the telephone company, and drove an old green Ford that announced itself with a squeaking suspension before it reached my barn. He handed me 3 HOA notices. Silver Creek had been fining him for an equipment shed on land they did not control. They keep saying I owe them $800, he said. That changed the temperature in the room. Cynthia was not confused about one boundary. She was testing every boundary around her. 2 weeks later, she confronted me at the gate with 2 board members and another stack of papers. This is your final opportunity to cooperate, she said. Or what? Her smile sharpened. Maybe I should call the sheriff and let someone with actual authority explain this to you. For half a second, I almost laughed. Instead, I looked at the red binder visible through my workshop door, then back at her. You should do that sometime. On the 4th, Cynthia changed tactics. I came home just before sunset and found a laminated notice zip-tied to my iron gate. The plastic clicked against the metal in the evening wind. Community nuisance review pending, it said, followed by a list of supposed violations involving livestock noise, exterior lighting, unauthorized equipment, and something called visual incompatibility. I stood there with dust on my boots and read that last phrase twice. Apparently, my barn had become visually incompatible with houses built decades after my grandfather first repaired fence on this land. I cut the notice loose, carried it into the workshop, and opened the red binder. It was getting thick. Cynthia's letters filled one section. Photographs from my cameras filled another. Walter Bennett's notices sat behind a yellow divider. I added the laminated sheet, wrote the date across the top, and closed the rings with a metallic snap. I could have ended the game quickly. One telephone call from my office would have made Cynthia understand exactly where I worked. But using my position to win a private property argument would have made me no better than someone who confused a title with unlimited authority. So I kept my badge out of it. Cynthia interpreted restraint as weakness. The following week, she appeared at a Silver Creek board meeting with enlarged photographs of my ranch mounted on foam board. Walter attended and called me afterward. According to him, Cynthia described my property as a threat to community values and claimed the association had a responsibility to establish a protective buffer around neighboring land. There was one problem. A homeowners association could not manufacture jurisdiction because it disliked the view. 2 days later, another private security vehicle stopped outside my gate. This time it remained on the public road, but the driver photographed every vehicle entering my property. I saved that footage too. Then something useful happened. Deputy Chief Robert Hayes called me on a Thursday afternoon and asked whether I was still hosting the department barbecue that spring. We held one every year. Nothing official, just coworkers and their families eating too much food somewhere without fluorescent lights or ringing office telephones. I looked through the workshop window toward the pasture. Absolutely, I said. My place this year. Robert laughed. You sure your neighbor can handle that many pickup trucks? He knew about Cynthia. Most of my command staff did by then. Although I had made one rule clear, nobody was getting involved unless there was an actual reason. The barbecue was scheduled for the second Saturday in May. I spent Friday evening cleaning the grill, stacking mesquite beside the fire pit, and setting folding tables beneath the live oaks. By noon Saturday, trucks began rolling through the gate. Robert arrived first in jeans and an old college shirt. Sergeant Mike Callahan brought 2 coolers. Lieutenant Emily Parker showed up carrying enough potato salad for 30 people. Nobody wore a uniform. Nobody displayed a badge. We were simply people enjoying an afternoon away from work. From Silver Creek, that was probably all. Cynthia could see 25 strangers, a line of pickups, smoke above the trees, and my old ranch suddenly full of activity. Around 6:30, Mike looked toward the road. Dan, he said, lowering his drink. A white sport utility vehicle had stopped beside my gate. Cynthia stepped out with her telephone already in her hand. For a few seconds, Cynthia stayed beside her vehicle and watched us through the iron gate. 25 people. More than a dozen pickup trucks. Music drifting from the yard. Smoke rising above the live oaks. She walked toward the gate with quick, deliberate steps, her white sneakers crunching over gravel. I set my tongs beside the grill and wiped my hands on a towel. Robert Hayes noticed her first. He was sitting beneath an oak tree with a paper plate balanced on one knee. Mike Callahan stood near the coolers. Emily Parker was helping refill a tray of hamburger buns. Nobody moved. Cynthia stopped at the entrance and raised her telephone. Mr. Mercer, what exactly is going on here? Dinner, I said. Her eyes swept across the trucks. This is clearly an organized event. It is a private gathering. Silver Creek regulations prohibit unapproved events of this size. The smell of mesquite smoke rolled between us. We have covered this, Cynthia. My ranch is not part of Silver Creek. She stepped through the open gate. 1 foot past the brass survey marker, then the other. I looked down at it. She did not. Your guests are creating excessive traffic, she said. There are vehicles everywhere. I glanced back. Every truck was parked inside my fence line with plenty of room between them. On my property, the music is disturbing residents. I could hear the speaker behind me. It was barely louder than the cicadas. Then file a legitimate noise complaint with the county. That was exactly what she wanted to hear. Her smile appeared instantly. Gladly. She tapped her telephone and walked several more feet onto the ranch. Mike caught my eye from across the yard. I gave him a small shake of my head. Nobody interfered. Cynthia began speaking to the dispatcher. At first, she mentioned noise. Then the story grew. She described a large, unauthorized gathering. She said unfamiliar vehicles were entering and leaving the area. Then she claimed the property owner was refusing to cooperate with community officials. I felt my jaw tighten at that phrase. Community officials. Cynthia had promoted herself again. Robert quietly set his plate on the table. Dan, he said, do you want me to handle this? Cynthia turned toward him. Excuse me. Robert said nothing. I kept my eyes on Cynthia. Not yet. She returned to her call, but I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. She had heard the tone in Robert's voice. Calm, familiar, professional. Around the yard, conversations had faded. Emily placed the hamburger buns down. Mike folded his arms beside the cooler. A radio clipped to the belt of one guest gave a brief electronic chirp. Cynthia glanced toward it, but kept talking. She told dispatch she felt officers should respond immediately because the situation was becoming confrontational. Nobody had raised a voice. Nobody had approached her. The security camera above the barn was recording every second. I looked through the workshop doorway. The red binder sat exactly where I had left it. Then Cynthia ended the call and lifted her chin. They are on their way. I closed the grill lid. The metal struck with a clean clang. Good. About 7 minutes later, red and blue light began flashing against the oak trees. The first patrol unit turned through my gate slowly, tires grinding over the same gravel Cynthia had crossed 7 minutes earlier. A second unit followed 20 yards behind it. Their lights painted the barn doors red, then blue, then red again. Cynthia moved before either vehicle had fully stopped. She hurried toward the first unit with her telephone raised like evidence. Deputy Aaron Cole stepped out and immediately looked past her toward the yard. I knew Aaron. He had transferred into patrol 8 months earlier, young, careful, and still formal enough to call everyone above lieutenant by rank even at the grocery store. His expression changed for half a second when he saw me, but he recovered quickly. Cynthia did not notice. Officer, thank goodness, she said. I am Cynthia Whitmore, president of the Silver Creek Estates Homeowners Association. This property owner is hosting an unauthorized event and refusing to cooperate. Aaron glanced toward the picnic tables. Robert Hayes was still seated beneath the oak tree. Emily Parker had picked up her drink again. Mike Callahan leaned against a cooler with the kind of patience that comes from knowing exactly how a conversation is going to end. Ma'am, Aaron said, who owns this property? Cynthia pointed at me. He claims he does. Claims. That word almost made Mike smile. Aaron walked toward me while his partner remained near the patrol unit. Sir, can I get your name? I reached into my wallet and handed him my driver's license. Not my department identification. Not my badge. My driver's license. Cynthia watched closely and seemed encouraged by that. Aaron read the card. His eyes lifted to mine. Mr. Mercer, we received a complaint about noise and an unauthorized gathering. You are welcome to check the noise level, I said. And this is private property. Everyone here is my invited guest. Cynthia stepped closer. He has been warned repeatedly about association standards. Aaron looked at her. Is this property inside your association? It directly borders Silver Creek. That was not my question. Her mouth tightened. Before she could answer, Mike walked over carrying 2 unopened bottles of water. Aaron noticed him and straightened slightly. Sergeant Callahan? Cynthia turned. Mike handed me 1 bottle. Evening, Cole. Then Emily approached from the tables. Aaron blinked. Lieutenant Parker? Deputy, she said pleasantly. Cynthia looked from Emily to Mike, then toward the picnic tables. Robert finally stood. He brushed a few crumbs from his jeans and walked across the yard. Aaron's partner recognized him immediately. Deputy Chief Hayes. Cynthia's telephone lowered an inch. Robert nodded toward the patrol units. Sorry your dinner got interrupted. Aaron looked back at me. He had tried to keep the entire interaction neutral, and I respected him for it. But now there was no practical reason to pretend we were strangers. Captain Mercer, he said, how would you like us to proceed? Cynthia went completely still. Even the confidence in her face seemed to lose its footing. Her eyes moved across the yard again, but this time she actually saw what had been there all evening. The radio clipped to a belt, the folded uniform inside the dusty pickup, the department challenge coin beside the barbecue sauce, the familiar way everyone had spoken to one another. Captain, she said quietly. I opened the bottle of water. Yes. Her eyes widened. You work for the sheriff's department? For 22 years. Cynthia looked toward Aaron as if waiting for him to correct me. He did not. Then she pointed toward the subdivision. That does not change the violations. You are right, I said. My job changes nothing about the property line. I turned toward the workshop. Through the open door, the red binder waited on the shelf. But the records might. I walked into the workshop and pulled the red binder from the shelf. It landed on the workbench with a heavy thump, sending a thin layer of sawdust across the wood. Cynthia followed as far as the doorway. Aaron and his partner stayed several feet behind her, while Robert, Mike, and Emily remained outside unless they were needed. That mattered to me. I did not want a wall of uniforms, even invisible ones, turning a property dispute into something it was not. I opened the binder. My badge is irrelevant tonight, I said. This is what matters. The first section held my recorded deed and certified survey. I slid both across the bench. Aaron studied the parcel map beneath the fluorescent shop light. The north boundary was unmistakable. Silver Creek Estates ended outside my gate. My 26 acres sat beyond it as a separate parcel with no association membership attached. Cynthia folded her arms. That does not address the impact his activities have on our residents. We will get there, I said. I turned the divider. 12 violation notices. Barn color. Fence design. Utility trailer. Exterior lighting. Livestock noise. Every one issued under Silver Creek letterhead. Then came photographs taken from inside my property. Cynthia's expression shifted when she saw those. Those were compliance inspections. I turned another page. A still image from my security camera showed the private security employee standing past the brass marker with his telephone raised toward my barn. Date and time were printed across the bottom. Another image showed the white golf cart inside the gate. Another showed Cynthia herself stepping onto the ranch during an earlier confrontation. I never authorized inspections, I said. Aaron looked at Cynthia. Did Mr. Mercer give the association permission to enter? We believed we had authority. Based on what document? She opened her mouth, then closed it. I reached the yellow divider. Walter Bennett's notices came next. Cynthia immediately pointed at them. Those are not his records. Walter gave me copies. I pulled out a simple county parcel map. His 12 acres were outside Silver Creek too. Then came copies from 2 more neighboring landowners who had contacted me after Walter started asking questions. Different properties. Same association. Same language. Same claim of community enforcement. Cynthia looked at the binder as though it had changed shape. This is being taken completely out of context. That is why I kept the context. I turned to the final section. Emails. Certified mail receipts. Dates of security visits. Camera timestamps. My written responses explaining the boundary again and again. 6 months of Cynthia being told the same fact and continuing anyway. Aaron exhaled slowly. Captain, do you want to make a formal complaint about tonight? I looked through the doorway toward the brass marker near the gate. I want a night documented accurately. Nothing more, nothing less. Cynthia seemed almost relieved until I added. And I want the earlier incidents included as supporting records. Her face tightened. You have been collecting this against me? No, Cynthia. I have been keeping records of what happened. Robert finally stepped into the doorway. He did not look at her. He looked at the binder. That distinction matters. Cynthia glanced toward the patrol cars, then back at me. The authority she had spent 6 months pretending to possess had disappeared without anyone raising their voice. I closed the binder. The rings snapped together with the same metallic sound I had heard dozens of times before. You wanted someone with actual authority to explain the boundary, I said. Now we can let the documents do it. The patrol units left 40 minutes later, and the barbecue never quite returned to normal. The red and blue reflections disappeared from the oak trees. The radios went quiet, and Cynthia drove back toward Silver Creek without saying goodbye. What remained was paperwork. Deputy Aaron Cole documented the noise complaint, the property boundary, Cynthia's entry onto the ranch, and the records I had provided. I gave him copies, not conclusions. That distinction mattered. By Monday morning, the incident report existed in black and white, and for the first time Cynthia could not rewrite the story on association letterhead. Then Walter Bennett called me. You might want to check your email, he said. 3 more landowners had contacted him over the weekend. One owned 8 acres south of Silver Creek. Another had a small horse property near the western boundary. The third was an older couple whose driveway crossed near the subdivision entrance. None belonged to the homeowners association. All had received demands from Cynthia. I sat at my kitchen table with coffee cooling beside my laptop and watched the pattern assemble itself. Different names, different parcels, same phrases, community standards, compliance obligation, administrative assessment. The language looked official until you placed it beside the county maps. Then it looked like what it was, authority extending beyond the line that created it. Walter and I did not organize some neighborhood revolt. We did something simpler. We gave the records to the people responsible for reviewing them. The Silver Creek board received copies. So did the association's management company. The board scheduled a special meeting 9 days later. I attended as a neighboring property owner, not as Captain Mercer. No uniform, no badge, jeans, boots, and the red binder under my arm. The meeting room smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner. Cynthia sat at the front table beneath the Silver Creek logo. For the first 10 minutes, she described everything as misunderstandings caused by unclear boundaries. Then Walter stood and placed his survey on the table. The horse property owner followed. Then the older couple. One map became 4. One mistaken notice became dozens. The board members stopped looking at us and started looking at Cynthia. A man named Richard Sloan, the association treasurer, flipped through a stack of invoices and frowned. Why did Silver Creek pay private security to inspect parcels outside the association? He asked. Cynthia said the inspections protected community interests. Richard asked who authorized them. She said the authority was implied. The room went silent. Implied. 6 months of pressure had been built on that word. The management company's representative requested a recess. When everyone returned, Cynthia was no longer seated in the center chair. The board announced an immediate review of enforcement activity involving non-member properties and suspended Cynthia's enforcement authority pending that review. 2 weeks later, the result arrived by certified mail. The outside property notices were withdrawn. Silver Creek formally acknowledged my ranch boundary and the boundaries of the other affected parcels. Security patrols were instructed not to enter private neighboring land without permission. Cynthia resigned as president before the next regular meeting. Then I heard a vehicle slow outside. Cynthia's white sport utility vehicle passed the iron gate. She looked toward the ranch, saw me standing there, and kept driving. For the first time in 6 months, she stayed on her side of the brass marker. 3 Saturdays later, the ranch smelled like mesquite again. I stood beside the grill with a pair of tongs in one hand and a cold soda in the other, while late afternoon sunlight stretched across 26 acres of grass, cedar fence, and old Texas dirt. The difference was silence. Not empty silence. Peaceful silence. No security guard idling outside the gate. No camera phones pointed toward my barn. No cream-colored envelopes waiting in the mailbox. Just cicadas in the live oaks, burgers sizzling over charcoal, and tires crunching across gravel as friends arrived for another barbecue. Robert Hayes parked beneath the same oak tree as before. Mike Callahan unloaded 2 coolers. Emily Parker brought potato salad again, although this time she claimed she had made less. Nobody believed her. Walter Bennett arrived in his squeaky green Ford carrying a pecan pie and a grin I could see through the windshield. Looks different around here, he said as he climbed out. I looked toward the north gate. Nothing changed. Walter laughed. Exactly. He was right. The iron gate was still rusty along the bottom rail. The barn still needed another coat of stain. My pickup still had dust across the tailgate. Silver Creek had not transformed my ranch because it had never possessed the authority to transform it in the first place. The only new thing stood beside the gate. After everything ended, I had asked the surveyor to inspect the north boundary again. He confirmed the original measurements and installed a fresh brass marker beside the old one. Small, bright, almost boring. $20 worth of metal probably carried more real authority than every threatening notice Cynthia had mailed me. Around sunset, a white sport utility vehicle appeared on the subdivision road. Conversation continued behind me, but I noticed it immediately. Cynthia slowed near the gate. For 1 second, I thought she might stop. She looked toward the trucks, the tables, the grill smoke curling above the trees. Then her eyes dropped toward the survey marker. She kept driving. No telephone came out. No window rolled down. No one followed her with a clipboard. I watched the vehicle disappear behind the Silver Creek entrance and felt something I had not expected. Victory wants somebody standing on the other side looking defeated. Relief means you finally get your Saturday evening back. I walked into the workshop and looked at the red binder sitting on the shelf. 6 months earlier, every page inside it had represented another irritation. Now those same pages represented something else. Patience. Cynthia had assumed my silence meant I had nothing to say. She thought the person who spoke with the most confidence automatically held the most authority. She had been wrong about both. I never needed my badge to win that argument. I needed a deed, a survey, a camera, accurate records, and enough patience to let the truth become impossible to ignore. I left the binder on the shelf and returned to the grill. Mike handed me the tongs. Robert was laughing at something Walter had said. Gravel crunched beneath another arriving pickup. Beyond the fence, the new brass marker caught the last orange light of the evening. Cynthia had spent months trying to move a boundary with letters, threats, and confidence. In the end, the boundary never moved an inch. Real authority does not need to shout. It knows exactly where its jurisdiction ends. And justice is rarely loud. It is smart, patient, and inevitable. If an HOA president ignored your deed, crossed your survey line, and called the sheriff after months of trying to enforce rules on land she did not control, what would you do first? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoy stories where arrogance collides with evidence, property lines, and consequences nobody bothered to check, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the strongest response is not flashing a badge or shouting louder. It is keeping the letters, saving the camera footage, preserving the survey, and letting the record show exactly who crossed the line.